The Lost City of Pompeii. Life frozen in time. The day that the sky turned to flames is one that I will never forget. The morning started out much like any other morning in Pompeii. It was the kind of brilliant morning that gives you the impression that the gods were smiling upon us. The sea was unruffled and as blue as glass, and the sun was shining brightly over the Bay of Naples. The sounds of life that I was accustomed to hearing when I woke up were the clatter of horse hooves on cobblestones, the conversation of neighbors greeting one another in the street below, and the aroma of freshly baked bread drifting through the air from the bakery that was directly across the street from me. In the warmth of the day, I strolled out into the open air. The marketplace was bustling with activity, with merchants hawking their wares and offering olive oil from Spain, garum sauce from the southern ports, and magnificent garments painted with Tyrian purple. The aroma of roasted nuts and honey cakes joined forces with the scent of incense that was emanating from the temple of Jupiter. Laughter reverberated against the marble walls of the baths which were located nearby, while men debated political issues and poets performed their most recent poetry. Pompeii was a city that was known for its luxury and comfort. Our walls were covered with paintings depicting scenes of love and myth, such as Venus emerging from the sea, Bacchus pouring his wine, and Apollo playing his lyre from the sky. During our meal, we sipped spiced wine by lamplight while dining beneath paintings and mosaics, and we never once considered the possibility that the ground beneath our feet was alive. We were surrounded by the spectacular and silent Vesuvius volcano. We believed it to be eternal, or a protector, rather than a danger. On its slopes, farmers tended to their grapes, and children played in the shadows of the mountain. No one of us had any idea that it could become active. As on that day, it did. It was just after midday when the city was shaken by a deep rumbling, which was a peculiar and hollow sound that rolled throughout the earth. A dust cloud descended from the rafters, and amphorae shook violently on the shelves. People paused in the middle of their talk to listen. Next, there was again another tremor, this one being more intense. Onlookers pointed in the direction of the peak. The sky was filled with a thick, huge, and winding cloud of smoke that rose into the air. The sun began to wane within a few moments. Our eyes were wide with shock. It was a storm, according to some, but others whispered that the gods were angry. This time, the ground shook much more violently. Dogs made a frantic barking sound. There were no birds left. The atmosphere shifted, becoming dense, metallic, and smelling like ash. While the baker was leaving his oven, his hands were still covered in flour. I recall watching him go. In a hurry, the priest of Isis emerged from the temple while holding sacred scrolls in his hands. When their mothers brought them inside, the children cried out in distress. Afterwards, the ash started to fall, and at first it was a gentle fall, with soft gray flakes that settled on rooftops and shoulders. As if it were snow, it appeared to be so innocuous. In a short amount of time, however, it became murky and opaque. Taking a breath became excruciating. A multitude of individuals were heard yelling, praying, and racing through the streets. The city was completely engulfed in darkness by the late afternoon. There was a faint brightness emanating from lamps through the cloud, but the world had changed hue. Everything was covered in ash, and the air was vibrating with thunder that did not originate from the sky, but rather from the mountain area. It showered down stones and debris that was ablaze. Roofs broke into pieces. Sculptures were broken. The once jovial form was filled with a sense of fear. I made every effort to locate my family. It was my mother's voice that pierced through the mayhem and called out my name. As the earthquakes became more intense, we clung to each other for support. The walls of the house trembled and the house itself groaned around us. We were instructed to make a hasty retreat toward the harbor by my father. As we made our way onto the street, I grabbed whatever little I could get my hands on, which included a shawl and a small bronze charm in the shape of a flying dove. It was nearly impossible to breathe in the air outside. My ankles were covered with ash that covered the ground. It seemed like I fell every few feet. I was only able to see a few steps in front of me. The mountain's roar became even louder, as if 1,000 chariots were all moving at the same time. When I turned around, I saw that lightning had split through the dark cloud that was above Vesuvius, illuminating it like a torch that was handed up to the skies from above. We made it to the outskirts of the city. But the sea had gone through a transformation. Due to the fact that the water had withdrawn, the shoreline was now dry and fractured. As they lay on their sides, the ships were skewed. Some individuals attempted to approach them by wading out into the water, but the waves refused to return on their own. After that, the temperature began to rise, an unexpected and powerful explosion that is hotter than any forge and faster than the wind. Ash and fire were carried through the streets as it tore through them. The memory of my father pulling me toward a wall and protecting me with his body is still fresh in my mind. His voice, hushed, was the last thing I heard, and it was my particular name. And after that, nothing. The city of Pompeii and all of its inhabitants were trapped in a moment of death, and we slept beneath that ash for nearly 2,000 years. The world above changed throughout time. There was a rise and fall of empires. There were roads constructed over our graves. The names of us were not remembered. On a particular day in the 18th century, men who were digging in the vicinity of the town of Resina came across something, a wall that had been painted with vibrant colors. Then, someone else. A mosaic that is completely unbroken. Once more, the city emerged in a cautious and slow manner. People referred to it as a miracle. The excavators discovered that our world had been preserved as they brushed away the layers of ash. They discovered frescoes that were still sparkling with reds and blues, loaves of bread that were still sitting in ovens, and bronze lamps that were frozen in the middle of their light. A dog was found, curled up and still chained in one of the courtyards. The other depicts a couple who are deeply in love with each other, their faces turned inexorably toward one another. Even the words that we had written survived, and they were written in graffiti on the walls. It said, "Life is short, enjoy it while you can." None of the irony was overlooked. Strangers are walking throughout our streets today. They walk on the same stones that we used to have to walk barefoot on. They examine the plaster casts that were taken of our last moments, which depicted our faces contorted in terror and our arms reaching for life. Those who are in awe whisper, while others remain mute. Because of the wind, their voices may be heard throughout the ruins. The sound of the children's laughing that I used to know, the music that played in the taverns, and the soft flow of the fountains that used to calm the air during the summer are all very close to my ears. It is a tribute to both the wrath of nature and the frailty of humanity that the city that perished in an instant is now preserved in time. It is a city that lives forever. We believed that Vesuvius would relax for all of eternity. We were both mistaken. However, it could be considered a form of compassion that the mountain buried us so quickly, as it was in that ash that we discovered immortality. Despite the fact that centuries have passed, I am still here. I am the memory of Pompeii. I am the hushed speech in the dust and the reverberation in the stone. When you pay close enough attention, you will still be able to hear us. Yes, we are still here. The only thing we are doing is waiting in the silhouette of the mountain. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.